Hello everyone, I'm Charlie from Dr. Wen. You may have noticed my YouTube channel name has changed. I thought I would since that I'm only doing Doctor Who videos now. Might as well change it to something to do with Doctor Who. Today I'm going to be continuing my series of 12 Doctor Who videos. This is going to be the third video in the series. I'm going to be ranking all of the TV stories in Series 3 of the revived era of Doctor Who. Usually I do a bit of an explanation about what Doctor Who is in the start in case you haven't watched it, but since you're most probably a Doctor Who fan if you're watching this, then I don't think I'm going to. So, just a brief overview of Series 3, just in case you've forgotten that. Today I'm going to be ranking all TV stories of Series 3. There are 9 of them. There are 13 main episodes in the series, but there are 2 two-parters and 1 three-parter finale, which means that it's reduced to 9 stories. It features the 10th Doctor, played by David Tennant, and his companion is Martha Jones. The main villain in this is the Master, played by John Simm, and it also features the Daleks, specifically the Cult of Skaro. So, this also features the Judoon in the very first episode. I thought I'd include that as well. And by the way, I won't include the Christmas special surrounding it, so the Runaway Bride and Voyage of the Damned. I don't think that will really be necessary since I'm going to do a Christmas special ranking video when I've finished rewatching. Currently I'm on Series 8. So let's start off this video with 9th place. It is Daleks in Manhattan, Evolution of the Daleks. I was actually surprised that when I came to looking at the series as a whole that this was the worst, because if this is the worst the series has to offer, it's not that bad. I definitely prefer the first part, Daleks in Manhattan, to the second part. The climax of the episode at the end was a bit weird. But overall, it's more an interesting episode than a quality one. It shows what it would be like if Daleks tried to evolve and merge their DNA with humans. But this episode didn't really work. The design for the for Dalek Sec was strange. He looked a bit like a Cyclops, and his brain, you could see that was quite weird. But I quite liked the Daleks, the entire concept of the Cult of Skaro. We'd seen them before in Army of Ghosts and Doomsday, when they tried to send an army of Daleks out and it worked, but they escaped and went back there. It's got an okay plot. Spider-Man is in it, played by Andrew Garfield, except he's not actually Spider-Man, obviously. This was before he did that. But it's still got an okay story. The whole Empire State Building Dalekanium thing's quite weird, but it's okay. It's not that bad. I don't not like it. It's just a very meh episode. In 8th place is The Lazarus Experiment. You'd be surprised to find this isn't a bad quality episode, it's just the terrible CGI. This is what this episode is infamous for. I gave this episode a 6.4. It is better than Daleks in Manhattan, Evolution of the Daleks, purely because of the creature design and the story. The story is actually surprisingly cohesive, and it's pretty good, fast-paced story. It's quite a weird episode of Doctor Who, to be fair, but yeah, it's a very meh episode as well. It's not very memorable, but it is for the CGI. This is probably the worst CGI that New Who has produced in total. So yeah, that is why this is that low down. In 7th place is The Shakespeare Code, which has a 7.3. This isn't a bad episode, but it's not amazing. I'd say it's good. It features William Shakespeare. I'm not really a big fan of the historical episodes that include a really famous person like this, and if you're looking at the newer ones like Rosa and The Haunting of Villa Diodati, things like that, I'm not that keen on it. The whole part where they go underground and find the other person is just sort of a weird subplot to fill in the time, and it can be argued as a bit of a filler episode, not one that they had to include like the Dalek episode in the finale in the first one. It's just a bit of filler. It doesn't really do anything to the overall plot. It's not that memorable, but the Carrionites are quite interesting, like the power of words and things like that, and how they defeat them is quite good. But it's okay. It's an okay episode. It's not very strong, but it's still quite good. Next, in 6th place, we have Gridlock. This was the... I don't know what number episode this was in the series, to be honest, but I gave it a 7.5. This is... 7.5 is usually the marker to say this is a good episode. Anything around 7.5, I'd say good. Not brilliant, not excellent, but it's pretty good. It involves the Face of Boe and New Earth, and it's quite interesting to see that New Earth actually has been abandoned and everyone's underground, and the CGI was actually quite impressive compared to the Lazarus Experiment, how they managed all the flying cars in the underground highway. I thought that was quite interesting. I was quite surprised to see the Macra, because they hadn't appeared since the second Doctor's era. Yes, the Macra Terror, and that was quite odd. But they didn't really do a lot with the Macra. Before them, they were giant alien crabs, and now they're giant alien crabs in a road. I just think they kind of threw them in to have some sort of villain, but I think it would have still been quite a strong story without them. The whole scene where the 10th Doctor's going through all the cars is actually quite good, and the only bad things about this episode is it's quite bland. All the colours, it's just black and brown and grey, and the cat people are extremely weird, just like in New Earth. Check out my previous video about that, but it's still quite a good episode. Next up, this is the episodes where I think these ones are really good. In 5th place, we have Smith and Jones, the very first episode of this series where Martha Jones is introduced. Picks up pretty much directly after The Runaway Bride, and it's okay. It involves the Judoon hunting a criminal, and they're trying to basically send a hospital up to the moon, and the rain goes backwards or something like that. And originally the Doctor thinks this alien criminal is him, so he's got to avoid the Judoon because they'll send him to prison if they realise he's not human. So most of it involves him avoiding them, even though he finds out that this alien criminal isn't him and is the woman we see on screen. I can't quite remember what species she was, but this made for a pretty good episode. The Doctor and Martha were great in this. I think Martha's a better companion than Rose, to be honest, which most people probably won't agree with. This is quite a strong episode, and definitely one of the better series openers. Not as good as some others, I think, but definitely better than New Earth. Moving on, we have 4th place, the episode 42. This is written by Chris Chibnall, the current showrunner, who, in my opinion, he is the worst showrunner, but there's only been 3, so I think he was still okay. But he gets a lot of hate for this episode. I don't really see why. It's quite a strong episode. It's fast-paced, definitely, and it was the episode where I actually thought Martha was going to... I thought it was going to be the first companion death, because before we'd had Rose, who went into the alternate universe, but I thought this would be the first companion death where Martha was falling into that sun, but she ended up coming back. But I thought this was a really good episode. The villain wasn't the most creative, it was just a person in a red mask saying the same phrase over and over again, but it was still a really good episode, actually. I think I quite like episode with timers, to be honest. I think there are some others as well, like The Power of Three in Series 7. I recently watched that has a timer in. I think Chris Chibnall does really like timers. But overall, this is a really strong, solid episode. That's why I gave it a 9.2. Now, next up, these are the episodes I really like. This is Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords. This is an incredible finale. It's the only proper 3-parter in New Who. There are some 2 and 1-parters that you could argue are the same story, but I'd say that this is definitely a 3-parter. It is the first introduction of the Master in New Who. It involves him using a chameleon arch to disguise himself as a human professor in this planet at the edge of the universe in the year 100 trillion, and it featured Jack Harkness as well, who isn't shown here, and he makes the Doctor go really old. He goes back to Earth and becomes a Prime Minister, and then in between the sound of drums and Lasso of the Time Lords, an entire year has passed. The Doctor is really weak and old, and Martha must save him. It was a really strong finale. Not one of the best. I think there have been better, like in series 9, 10, and Day of the Doctor, but this was still a really, really good episode. In second place we have the two-parter, Human Nature and the Family of Blood, with a 9.5. This is where the Doctor uses a chameleon arch to disguise himself as John Smith, a professor in the 1910s at an English boarding school, and basically makes the most human Doctor even more human, and it made for a really good story. The Family of Blood are quite good villains, not the best, but still pretty interesting. And the thing with this episode is, I can't quite put my finger on what's so good about it, but I definitely prefer the first part to the second part. There's not that much of a difference, but lots of the time with two-parters I prefer the first part. The second part seems like it shouldn't be as long, which is why I prefer the new era, because there's longer one-parters, and they don't really need two-parters. But this was a really strong episode, great characters, and a really interesting plot and villains. Finally, we have Blink, with a 9.6 out of 10. This was rated by IMDb as the best Doctor Who story of all time, with 9.8. I disagree with that. My favourite New Who episode of all time is Twice Upon a Time, which I've given a 9.9. But this is still a really good episode, and I've got to agree it is one of the best. Definitely in my top 10, maybe not 5, but it's definitely up there. So this one actually proves that Doctor and Companion light episodes can be really good, and it's the first one to not have a Doctor or Companion. They are shown, but mainly it revolves around Sally Sparrow avoiding the Weeping Angels and trying to bring the Doctor back to present-day Earth to find his TARDIS. It's a really strong episode and explores the consequences of time travel really well. And I just love this episode. It's amazing, it has everything, it has time travel, it has interesting characters, and a really good villain. The Weeping Angels are one of my favourites, probably my favourite, and I just wish they hadn't been in more episodes. Although I still like the future episodes, I wish they would have been just a one-timer like the Vashta Nerada. Okay, that's my video finished for today. I will see you guys in a few hours. I'm actually going to record another video straight after this one, where I'll rank the episodes of Series 4. Make sure you stay in tune for that. And also, I noticed 65% of you aren't subscribed. I'm not going to force you to subscribe, but it would be really helpful, since I am still a small YouTuber, to just press the subscribe button, and I'm hoping to get to 50 by the time I go back to school in September, which would be nice. So, also, spread the word of my YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm still a small YouTuber, so I'd really appreciate it if you did that as well. Okay, I will see you guys in a few hours, and hope you enjoyed this video.